You think about legends, and you do think about legends and think, why do they last? Of course, the people like Marilyn, Sinatra, John Wayne, they're still in the public conscious. All these years later, their movies are often repeated, and time again, if you are a great, like of course the late brilliant Richard Burton, whose film I saw recently on TV, Where Eagles Dare, you realise why they were great. They're just good, aren't they? And there are people, of course, that stay with you, and really you can just see an image and you know exactly who it is. Now, as many people know, I recently shared the news that sadly we lost the brilliant musical director Laurie Holloway, right? And he was the musical director for this incredible performance at the world famous London Palladium. And the story he told me, I think, may just shock you. As ever, let me explain. Good to see you today. Thank you so much as ever for joining me in the very heart of London. Lovely to have your company. Whatever you're doing, we'll have a lovely wave. Hope you're keeping well. Yes, as I say, legends. Who's your favourite legend? There's so many. I truly, as many people know, I love the comedy of Joan Rivers. I thought she was razor sharp. And I think in years to come, people will look back at her and say she was brilliant. Of course, it's still too early right now. What becomes a legend? It really all depends. It's you, the public, isn't it? People still know Frank Sinatra, but they know him not just for a brilliant performance or voice, but also for great songs. Very same, of course, for the likes of Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash. You could just go on. But this lady, Judy Garland, is truly a legend, particularly over here in the United Kingdom, where she enjoyed much of her success. In April 1951, after being let go by MGM, she came over here to revive her career and did so very spectacularly. Now, in 1964, she decided to come back to the Palladium. Had been back previously before, including Royal Command performances. But in 1964, the newly svelte Judy Garland came back to the Palladium alongside her equally brilliantly talented daughter, Liza Minnelli. I've met Liza, I've met Lorna, and I've met Joey. They're a wonderful family. But Laurie Holloway, the man I told you about, was the musical director. And here's where it gets fascinating, in fact, because Laurie was a very young guy, right? Just incredibly young, in his 20s, and suddenly the musical director on the London Palladium for one of the world's greatest stars. And I said to him, were you nervous? You must have been. He said, well, not really. He said, because by the time we got round to the show, I'd had a difficult time with Judy. Apparently he would turn up at her hotel room and she would either be asleep, or when she did finally come round, didn't feel in the mood to rehearse. And as he said, he was very demanding and young and wanted to do things right. But here's a story that he shared with me, which I think is particularly fascinating, because Judy, as we would know at that particular point in her career, while still great, now over here in London, she would have had very young singers like Sandy Shaw, Kathy Kirby, Cilla Black, Dusty Springfield, all clogging up the charts and possibly the stage spaces that she would have obviously very first been offered. And so she had a brilliant idea. She figured that the band of the moment were none other than the brilliant musicians that were Lennon and McCartney, i.e. the Beatles. And she said to Laurie, how about if we included a few Beatles songs in there? Maybe we could even do an album, what about that? According to Laurie, she was very, very badly managed. And according to him, he proposed this idea to her managers and said, she'd like to do this and I think this would work really well. At this point, at this particular point, the Beatles did have a lot of songs that would have suited Judy very well. And she wanted to go back into the arena of being a little bit funkier, a little bit trendier. Sadly, the managers never made an effort to make that dream happen for Judy Garland. And it's incredible. And Laurie told me a couple of years later, miraculously, they were both at a restaurant, and also seated at the restaurant was none other than the British singer Alma Cogan. And guess what? Alma had decided to do an album of Beatles covers. She became very friendly with John Lennon, and he apparently was also backing it by playing, I think, the tambourine or guitar. But either way, this was yet another lost opportunity for a wonderful legend. And I said to Laurie, was she angry about this? And she said no. He said no, she really liked Alma Cogan, she thought she was a terrific singer, and she just put it down to fate. But the true story is that Judy Garland really was very badly managed. And when I mentioned this to Paul McCartney, he said he would have loved to have had some of their songs sung by such a wonderful legend. It's amazing to think, as I said about these stories, that once they're lost, so it's great to share them with you. But what a missed opportunity. And some people might say, well, why didn't Judy push ahead and do that herself? The question I would say is she probably felt that wasn't her place, she was simply the act, and she was paying managers a lot of money. She did, but equally, she also lost out. Neil Sean, Haymarket, London.